What's up, everybody? We are working on week 8 of your first 12 weeks of training with your bodybuilding and mobile functionality hammer, and I would like to introduce the special guest for this video and probably the remainder of our videos, the cicadas. That's right. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and the cicadas are out. So if you can't hear me over the sound of their constant and incessant buzzing, get a deaf person to read my lips and show them your hammer. That'd be fun. So here's what we're going to do this week. It's a return to couplets. Last week, it was a heavier volume week. This week, we're coming back to our couplets. And basically, there are only 2 things that are primarily going to change as you move from day 1 to day 2 to day 3. Thing number 1 is which movements we pair together in the couplet. So we're still going to be working with our 15 minutes of movement training, then or quality movement training. Then we're going to add 2 couplets, well, 1 couplet and then 1 couplet. And what I want you to do is we're going to finish all the rounds of each couplet. So you're going to do 2 movements for all of the couplets and then move on to the next set of movements, the next set of couplets. So we're increasing our volume, but we're also incorporating some rest. The other thing that we're going to be messing with as we move from day 1 to day 2 to day 3 is the amount of rest you get between couplets. So hopefully you see what we're working with here. We're trying to teach your system, A, what it's like when you pair X movement with Y movement and you increase the amount of reps that you're doing with each of them, so how it affects you physiologically, cardiovascularly, but also how manipulating your rest time between those days affects your training. Hopefully you're learning something about how working with the hammer is going to be useful later on down the line when you kind of finish this 12 weeks and go forth. So, let's talk about your individual days of movement quality work, and then we'll move on to the couplet pairings and a couple of little notes that we're going to talk about there. So day 1, we're going to be moving into your switch swing, and I want to talk about something really specific here. I want you to start thinking about giving the hammer some time to float in between the moment when you release with one hand and you grab with the other, okay? And what we should see is the hammer floating with the handle parallel to the ground. We don't want to see the head coming up, and we don't want to see the handle coming up. So, here we go. Get your swing going. And then this is a quick handle release. I want a little bit more. Okay? Pause it. So, what you see here is we're looking for as close to parallel to ground as possible as we can get where the handle is parallel to the ground. The longer you can make this hang out in the air before it's necessary to come back with the other hand and switch it, as we move into flips and some of the more dynamic hand pass, hand transitions, the more time we can motivate with the hips and get the hammer to hang in the air, the more time you're going to have to manipulate that hammer. Okay, start time. Okay, so that's day number 1. Day number 2, your training, your first 15 minutes are going to be spent really focusing on the strict pullovers. It's been 8 weeks, so hopefully we should be making some progress towards getting your strict pullovers. But remember, we're thinking about abs staying nice and tight, quads, glutes staying nice and tight, and just having the arms move through the range of motion. So smooth to the back, smooth to the front, and make sure we're really pulling in to this front support position. Okay, take it over and take it back. And then finally, on day number 3, we're letting you determine where you need to spend the most work on your press progression. Okay, it may be that over the course of 15 minutes, what you really need to do is break that time up into going, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes working on a strict press, and then I'm going to spend 5 minutes working on a 2-to-1 press, and then I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes working a 2-to-2 press. That's whatever you need to get done for yourself. I just want you to continue to focus on the fact that we're starting in front of the body, driving up so the bicep is nice and close to the ear, and then returning, really focusing on squeezing that lat, pulling your elbow in nice and tight to your sides. Okay? Those are your 3 days of the first 15 minutes. Okay, day 1, we're doing the switch swings. Day 2, we're doing strict pullovers. And day 3, we are doing press variations at your skill level. All right? So once those once those movements are done, we're going to get into your couplets. Now, the thing to remember with these couplets is you're trying to pay attention to how pairing certain movements together affects you differently. You might find that pairing two movements together is very cardiovascularly taxing. You may find that one of those paired with something else makes a completely different training session. Bear that in mind, because as you're building programming for yourself later on down the line, if you don't choose to go through the website, you're going to need to know that information. Okay? So just put that bug in your ear. All right? So, day number 1, couplet number 1, and you're going to be taking 90 seconds of rest in between your two couplets. We're going to do a shoulder squat, front support squat, shoulder squat, and then we'll move directly with no rest into your presses. You get to rest after the presses, take 90 seconds, and then recycle back and hit those squats again. So, I'm going to start on my shoulder. Okay, got my squat, move into the front support, squat, squat, and then back to the front. So that would have been 3 squats. Then I'm going to grab hold, press, and I want you to alternate these presses. So we get used to changing dominance from right hand press, control switch, left hand press. You're going to do that for 5 rounds, okay? 5 of those couplets, 90 seconds rest in between. Then we move on to your next set of couplets where we're going to be focusing on your progression of pullover and your progression of slam. I would say probably for the first couple of rounds, really think about doing individual slams from a start position. As you feel more comfortable, then you could probably think about moving into multiple slams. But what we're thinking about here, and again, we're talking about 5 rounds, 90 seconds in between each one. I'm going to pull over. Then I can move directly into my slam, or I can start from the bottom and slam. Either way is fine. That is day number 1, the couplets. So for day number 2, the couplet structure is going to stay the same. We're still doing 5 pairs or 5 sets of the couplet. We're still doing 16 reps and 8 reps. We're just going to be taking the rest time from 90 seconds to 80 seconds. So for couplet number 1, we're going to do swings and presses. We're going to add them together. And here's what I want you to think about. After your last swing of your 16, whichever hand is at the pommel, okay, so for me that's my left, I'm going to pull that up and I'm going to grab the hammer with my right hand and land it in a press ready position. Okay, developing this skill now will be useful when we start to flow later. So let's say this is my last swing, ready to press, okay? And just alternate that between rounds. So if you start with your right hand on your first set, start with your left hand on your second set, and that transition will end up getting you into the opposite hand for alternating rounds. Couplet number 2, we are doing multiple slams. So slam, swing, slam, swing, no rest in between the reps, immediately followed by the shoulder squat, front support squat, shoulder squat. So, got my first slam. Okay, here's my 16th slam. I'm going to try and pull this up right into my squats. And again, that would have counted as 3 squats. So count the squat, not the hammer position. That's day number 2. Day number 3, we're doing the same rep scheme, 16 and 8. We're doing the same number of sets of the couplet, which is 5. We're just changing your rest time, which is going to be 70 seconds, and the movement pairings. So, movement pairing number 1, we're taxing the same muscle system, so bear that in mind. These are probably going to be a little bit more fatiguing than days number 1 and 2. We're looking at switch swings and multiple slams. So we're going to be doing swings for all of these reps. All right, so I'm looking at swing, got my switch, swing, got my switch. Let's say that's 16, now I'm swing, slam. Again, swing, slam. That is couplet number 1. Please pay attention to how your lower back is feeling. If you're not bracing this properly and getting your hips, you're getting your body in line with your arm before the hips go back, lower back's going to feel no bueno on this one. Couplet number 2, we are doing squats, shoulder, front support, shoulder, and pullovers wherever your progression is. But let's bear in mind, we're always fighting for the strict pullover. So, hiking that hammer up, squat, front support, squat. That's my 16th rep. I'm gonna pull it back to the front support, drive right over into the pullover, okay? And just like we talked about in day 2, I want you to think about starting with different shoulders so that we end up with a different hand in a position of dominance for the pullovers. That is week 8. We had to cut 24 times for planes. Remember, I don't care how many bad reps you can do. You shouldn't either. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.